Mic's on. All right. Welcome to the January 15th meeting of the Brainerd Planning Commission. Can we have a roll call, please?
Duval.
Present.
Norwood.
Present.
Peterson.
Present.
Gorham.
Present.
Grasula.
Present.
There we go. Looking for somebody to lead the pledge. Dave? All right. With that, we are up to the item number 4, the election of officers. I think the ground rules are pretty simple. Anybody can nominate anybody on the commission. You can't nominate yourself. I think that's the basic notion. If we get 2 candidates, we can either do, what do you think? Are we going to do a paper ballot if we get 2 candidates, or want to just do?
We just do a roll call.
A roll call. I'm comfortable with that. Very good. I'm going to open the floor to nominations for president and then, or chair and then vice chair.
I, Commissioner Norwood, nominate Commissioner Duval for chair.
There we go.
I'll second that.
And this is, of course, pending on Mike being reappointed, which he probably will be.
Yeah, there's an element of uncertainty there. I've not been formally appointed. I'd be happy to serve in that role. But just understanding that if I'm not reappointed, you'll be doing this in February.
Very good. All right. We're looking for, let's do, do we have any other nominations for chair? Hearing none, let's take a roll call on chair.
Duval.
Yes.
Norwood.
Yes.
Peterson.
Yes.
Gorham.
Yes.
Grasula.
Yes.
All right. That was so much fun. Let's do it again. Now we're looking for a vice chair, opening the floor to nominations for a vice chair.
I'd like to make a nomination of Mr. Gorman for vice chair.
All right, there we go. We've done that before. Do we have any other nominations for vice chair? Hearing none, let's do a roll call on that, please.
Duval.
Yes.
Norwood.
Yes.
Peterson.
Yes.
Gorham.
Yes.
Grasula.
Yes.
Very good. All right. With that, we're going to take about a 20-second break here. I'm going to change spots with Mike.
about just hand the hammer?
Do you want to do it from there? Take the hammer?
Hammer that baby.
All right, there we go.
Thank you.
Set the puck
If you
down.
touch it, you gotta do it.
Uh-huh.
All right, so with that, we are now, Planning Commission bylaws. Director Kronvik, do you want to step us through that?
So this would be a time for the Planning Commission to review anything. It could come up in the next, at the very end, review the Planning Commission itinerary. Is there anything that the commission would like to talk about with the bylaws, or anything that have an idea that you might like to work on or review?
So any comments on the bylaws, items of interest, or things that need to be clarified, or any other recommendations?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I'll make the same observation I make every single time, is that the bylaws actually give us more power than we exercise. And they actually suggest that we can have an active role in budgetary processes and things like this. Just kind of interesting to think about, because the bylaws really see this as a group that is actively influencing other parts of city government. It's not a role we traditionally have taken, but it's always interesting. And if we ever are going to do that, I think the lesson we've learned is that you want to move early in a year, because before you know it, the budget process will be on, and the money will all be gone. And by money, of course, we get things for comp plans, a lot of different things we may want to pursue as a goal. So that's my yearly observation.
Thank you, Mr. Gorham. Any other comments or questions? Justin? Did you? Okay. All right, well, with that, I would echo the tangible piece of what you're talking about, Commissioner Gorham, is the relating to the comp plan and the priorities and budget requests that would help implement that comp plan. That's on our agenda later on this evening, and so we'll have a chance to think about as we sort through the priorities for this coming, or this current year that we're in, how we want to guide staff on developing things, and one of those is the comp plan. So with that, I guess no changes at this point. So, and I'm handicapped by not having brought my laptop or my tablet, so I'm gonna need to
You want
keep,
my notes, Mike?
I just need to follow the agenda. I can do it on the side. So approval of the minutes.
Norwood, so moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the approval of the minutes? Otherwise, I would like to go to Director Comvik.
Yeah, before that would be the approval of the agenda.
Yeah, I noticed that. Is it on? It is on here.
You're new.
Yeah, give me my.
I'll
give me-
amend my motion for the approval of the agenda.
There, look at that.
I'll amend my second.
There you go. Okay, any discussion on that? Otherwise, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed, same sign. We have an approved agenda. Now we're moving to minutes.
So moved.
Okay?
Second.
Second, okay, and we have Commissioner Grasula has that. And so any discussion on that? None. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed, same sign, when that is approved. And we're now on to new business, and we have a consideration for an amendment to a planned unit development by Country Manor. So Director Cromvick, can you set that up for us, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Country Manor is proposing to amend the PUD by expanding the Southwest Memory Care Building to accommodate additional memory care units, removing a portion of the main parking lot, reducing the size of the northwest building, and removing a detached garage. The amended areas are included in the revised site plans that are in the packet. Staff did include the original plans for reference for the Planning Commission. The Child Care Center has remained unchanged. Staff has been working with Country Manor. They've been great to work with on adding additional cross connections and valves to the main water line. We've been working with Brainerd Public Utilities as well as our Public Works Department on that. So this will be a part of the development agreement that the City Council will review at the February 3rd meeting. The original site plan did contain approximately 197 parking stalls and the additional parking garages. The proposed amendment, from what I reviewed, would be approximately 43 off-street parking spaces would be removed and the one detached garage, supporting approximately 16 spaces. Country Manor is here to represent and discuss their thoughts behind this. They don't have any concerns about removing that additional parking. And these are areas that stormwater would already be set up. The area for that garage would already be set up, so it can be added at a later date. Especially if some of the building expansions happen. So there's still an opportunity in the future to add these into the plan. So with this, as of the writing, the Community Development Department has not received any calls regarding any concerns about this request. And with that, staff recommends approval of the PUD amendment, subject to the findings of fact with the following conditions: approval of the development agreement. And I can answer any questions, and again, Country Manor's here as well.
And the reason this is before us is because we've already approved a final PUD, is that correct? And so now there's a change to that.
There's a change to it, yep, so we're amending and, a few small amendments, but it does have to go through this formal process.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of staff before we move to public hearing? All right. Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing at 6:08 and ask the applicant or the applicant's representative to please come forward and maybe speak to their proposed change here or anything in the findings of fact that was presented that you'd like to elaborate on or further address. And if you would, please, state your name and address.
Certainly. My name is Anthony Fenstead. I'm the CEO for Country Manor. And greetings, commissioners. Just as a summary, I think as we've progressed through the process, we've seen an increase in construction costs and an increase in lending costs. And so as a team, we worked with our architects, our directors, and looked at the community as a whole. And it was important to us that any modifications would not impact quality of care throughout all of our service lines. And so, quite frankly, the areas that were modified were areas that we can effectively open effectively, as well as add, again, parking down the road as needed. And then a couple of the gathering spaces were reduced in square footage that can be, again, increased as needed down the road. So it was an exercise, a budgetary necessity to bring this project to fruition, as it's been, a desire for us for several years, and we are very close to crossing that finish line. And so this is one of those steps that wanted to be here tonight to answer any questions you may have, and obviously, as James pointed out, go through the necessary process.
Thank you. And a lot has happened since you came to us with a concept proposal.
Correct. Right.
A lot of things have turned upside down and sideways. So,
Yes.
any questions for the applicant here? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much, and we'll go on now and receive, if there's any input that others would like to provide on this, this is the time to speak. Would anyone else care to speak on this amendment to a PUD? Anyone online? Sean? No? Okay. Last call, anyone else care to speak on this? All right, at this point, we'll bring this back. Thank you very much. We'll close public hearing at 6:11. Discussion. Otherwise, looking for a motion to approve the amended PUD with the conditions, the single condition that's outlined by staff.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion by Grasula and second by Norwood. Any discussion on that?
I thought Jeff had the,
I did.
Oh, you did.
Peterson.
It's not too late to change your mind, I think, on the chair.
I'm right here.
The device is ready to go. Okay, second with Peterson. Thank you, Dave. Any discussion on that? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Next steps, Director Kromvik.
Yeah, so this will be heard at the February 3rd City Council meeting, and I know they're aware we're also working through a tax abatement request and a potential deferment of sack and whack. Those will also be heard at that February 3rd City Council meeting at 7:30.
Very good. Thank you. All right, with that, we're moving on to item 7B. That's the Planning Commission calendar of meetings, and we're looking to approve that. So first column is of interest to us. The other three look like they're technical for staff.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the calendar as presented.
Motion to approve, Gorham,
second Norwood.
Norwood. Any discussion on that calendar? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed, same sign. There you go, we have a calendar. And then we're moving on to item 8A, which is taking a look at the proposed data center ordinance. Director Kromvik, can you set that up for us, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So this was reviewed at the last Planning Commission meeting. Certainly, there's a lot of discussion on some of the items that are included in this ordinance. Staff did bring another revised or proposed ordinance back to the Planning Commission for review. I figured we'd go to this ordinance if you want to pull this up, Sean. And I did try to highlight some of the changes in yellow. So as you can see here within the allowed use table, it went from potentially an interim use permit to a conditional use permit as discussed in the last meeting, which also affected section A there below it. One of the things that we talked about location-wise, there's a lot of discussion, about this part. Staff's recommendation would be potentially to remove this location piece to it because there's so many sound mitigating rules within this. Certainly some of the other businesses that potentially have sound aren't held to kind of the same distance standards. The Planning Commission as well as City Council's already removed probably the most dangerous sound levels from a data center perspective of not having outdoor use with data centers. So these are all internal, and then typically what you're going to have is either fans then or the air coolers. So what staff did potentially add instead, or is recommending adding, is that data centers shall be designed and built to incorporate sound mitigation methods to reduce sound levels emanating from the data center to adjacent structures within 1,000 feet of the facility. So this could be something as, if the sound levels aren't even near MPCA levels, potentially moving air coolers to the other side of the building so they're not so the sound isn't emanating on maybe the side that a residential, property would. Certainly, it's a conditional use permit. Additional conditions can be placed, or conditional use permits can be declined if it is too close to a residential structure. So there are a lot of built-in contingencies in here to just simply restrict it within 500 feet. So that's something that staff is looking at. As potential. I know the one that Black Metrics is working through right now, you're proposing the air coolers to be completely within a building, which is certainly something that would be a sound mitigation method and would be part of that section that staff is recommending. So something to think through there. This is, I think, a big discussion topic from the commission still of what the commission is going to recommend from City Council from this perspective. If you go down to the next part, we talked about the city may order an additional sound study once per year during peak operation of the data center mechanical equipment. The data center operator must provide the results of the noise study conducted by a third-party engineer to the city within 30 days of the request by the city. We talked about getting rid of that requirement that you had to do it if there's issues with it. That allows the city to request it essentially that, once per year if we are getting complaints about the data center. Otherwise, again, if it's indoors and really is not generating any sound or concerns, to have that requirement that they must conduct it might be a bit extreme. So that was kind of staff's recommendation within this one. I'm not sure if the 30 days is quite appropriate. That's something I was, is it 60 days? Is it 30? How, fast can a sound engineer conduct this study and have the report back to the city? So that's something I was still working through. Certainly, if there are issues, the city would want, this information as soon as possible. But that's something that could potentially be discussed on what that time frame looks like. Other information that we talked about is contact information of the person that is essentially in charge of the facility would be posted on the City of Brainerd website. And then upon operation of the data center, the city shall notify and provide contact information to the facility liaison to property owners within 500 feet. That was talked about at the last meeting, is providing some of that information to nearby property owners. And then the another part that we looked at from a potential ordinance would be verification must be provided that all electronic waste generated from the operation will be hauled by a licensed electronic waste recycling firm. That was, I think, a request from the public to just make sure that things are properly being disposed of and recycled of. And then the last part is still fairly open-ended. Cryptocurrency mining operations shall be required to develop or purchase sufficient new renewable energy to offset % of the electricity consumed by the operation. Unfortunately, the Public Utilities Director was unable to be here tonight for some extenuating circumstances, but did provide an email that kind of broke down what the state of Minnesota requirements are, and then what BPU's plan is to implement those requirements from the state of Minnesota. So certainly the energy standards could be tied to what's already going to be required to get to 100% renewable. So with that, I'll open up to any questions that the Planning Commission may have.
Questions of staff? Yes, Mr. Norwood.
So within Section 4, Item F, it's specifying cryptocurrency mining operations. Are we excluding all other uses of this ordinance within that portion?
That's a good point. It probably should be data centers on that one, if it's part of the data center ordinance. So I kind of copied that word for word from the cryptocurrency ordinance that was from the Billings County ordinance, but it should probably read data centers.
Yep. Good attention.
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
Suggestion on the number 4 for the 30 days for a sound engineer. That can get tough in today's environment. But I think if they would show proof that they're contacted or working with someone, maybe the engineer reaches out, I think that's got to fall back to staff, would be my suggestion. You can tell if they're doing due diligence or not, I think.
Yes, Mr. Gorham.
Disappointed that the utilities director wasn't here. We definitely had some questions for him. I think part of this that we haven't talked about yet is water usage. And anything, if you start to dig into data centers at all, you start to see a lot of numbers thrown around. 5 million gallons a day, 300,000 gallons a day. I'm not quite sure what the number is. I guess the question, I don't expect you to be able to answer this, but do we feel besides the power element of it, does BPU feel like they're ready for the water element? And what do they look at? I mean, do they have, is the added consumption from data centers, is this something that's factored into the demand that BPU is looking at? Any idea?
So the water usage is specific to certain types of data centers or mining operations. So for instance, immersion mining doesn't use the water compared to certain other types of cooling methods. I know originally when some of the other proposals were coming through from VCV, there was a potential for that water usage, and because of the high volume and not maybe being able to meet the demands in that industrial park, it ended up essentially removing that idea from that type of usage for data mining. So it was kind of worked out before it got to the EDA level, because BPU wasn't going to be able to support that type of water usage or disposal of water.
Right, the other side of it there. I guess this question would be made for the fellow commission members here. Do we feel like we should have at least something in place because of water? Should we at least make that a concern, a criteria for looking at granting a use permit on it? Because even though we've maybe dodged the bullet a couple times, it might come back again. Or do you just feel like that BPU will manage it and say if they want too much water, we just won't give them the water? I'm just trying to kind of get a grasp on whether we should be doing about that.
Great question. Maybe run down the line here. Maybe Commissioner Norwood, your thoughts on that question?
What staff was referring to, as far as from my research and my perspective on it, is that we are dramatically moving away from the water usage type of cooling within these organizations. They don't use free-flowing water nearly as much as what they were before. And as the technology keeps on advancing, it's getting much more efficient as ways to and less harmful as for the type of cooling that we're doing. It's more efficient for one, two, not using water like we were before. And as far as for creating a ordinance or restriction on water usage, I think that would be more of a public works situation as to work through with them, rather than a planning commission issue to work through with them.
Thank you, Mr. Norwood. Mr. Gasula.
I think it may be helpful to have something in here just as a guideline. But again, it's going to come back to BPU and what they can provide, and really how much the disposal is going to cost. Because I don't think treating the water is that big a cost, but the disposal, treating it to go back into the river, is the higher cost.
Thank you. Mr. Peterson.
Well, I think they're both on to something a little bit, and maybe we can just mention the water, but that it actually goes back and references to BPU, that it has to be approved by them also, because they're going to be the authorities on it, I would say. So that would be just a little stipulation, has to be approved by. So that gives you an out right there if it doesn't work, I guess.
Thank you. The fact that it's a conditional use permit would allow us to tag a condition on as well for water consumption or that coordination piece with BPU on that. Not having it in the ordinance introduces the risk that you may pass by that opportunity in the staff report. Change of staff, we've all talked about it, we're all on the same page. Change of commission, change of staff. Do we lose sight of the fact that water is an issue we would want to talk about? So, maybe we could cleverly think about that. I think we'll probably want to either hear from Director Evans or maybe James, you're talking with Mr. Evans to follow up on some of the discussion here, and we can maybe bring some ideas forward in the next iteration of this. Can I?
Yeah, it could be something as simple as a water and wastewater disposal plan is required to be approved by Brainerd Public Utilities and the Public Utilities Department. That way they can weigh in on the conditional use permit on that condition. If there's no water usage, that would be a line item within the conditional use permit for the planning commission to review. I think that would be a pretty easy thing to add to the potential ordinance.
Like it. Does that address, you want some follow-up comment on that?
And that's what I'm looking at, because since we're taking such care on the energy aspect, that they present a plan and how they do that, I think it just makes sense that we go with the water as well. So it'd be, I'm not sure how we want to come about the language, but it would be requiring a plan and have it approved.
So what I heard staff suggest is a water, wastewater plan as part of their application submittal for a conditional use permit. And then we can then have discussion around that plan as to whether, whatever comments BPU has for the planning commission as we're considering a conditional use permit before us. Make sense? Okay. Any other comments on this? Yes, Mr. Norwood.
I believe staff's recommendation as to the elimination of item B is wise, given all the other sound mitigation items that are involved within it. There is, within the ordinance, there is a number of other portions that are attempting and trying to mitigate the larger issue of the sound. And so complicating it that much more with the 500 feet ends up just making it one more smaller hole to try to line up all the Swiss cheese slices for.
Do you have a reflection on that?
And that was my thoughts. Certainly there's already a lot of mitigation. One of the big ones is just requiring it to be indoors. And then, if there are residents within, a closer proximity, say it was even 200 feet, there's still an opportunity to deny a conditional use permit if it's, not really appropriate in that location. So there's things that can be done, in that aspect if it's too close to a neighborhood or a house. So I think that's already kind of built into the conditional use permit process. And then, talking about, incorporating some sound mitigation methods. And I talked about earlier, it could be as simple as moving the dry coolers to the other side of the building. It might still be within MPCA standards as it reaches that nearest residential place. But, if you were to put the dry coolers on the other side of the building, it could even cut the numbers in half. So being thoughtful or putting walls around it. I know the last one that Blockmetrics has provided, or the EDA actually had a building over the dry coolers. So, being mindful of that design, explaining what you've done for those mitigations to, not maybe even add some extra extenuating circumstances not to affect that neighboring residential property, I think would be appropriate rather than just having that blanket 500 feet.
Thank you. Other thoughts or feedback? James, 6B, what's the outcome of, how does that work, or what does the facility liaison do when they get a contact?
So my, idea behind this is that that mailer would include the contact information for that liaison as well as information to the city. If there's a dry cooler that's malfunctioning, that's really noisy, something like that they may be able to address. Certainly just standard operation would probably be more something that they'd contact the city for if they think there's issues with that. But if there's, specific something that's malfunctioning at the facility, that'd be an opportunity for them to reach out to the liaison. It's similar to what we have with our interim use permit short-term rentals.
Okay, and the notifying the property owners, does that 500 feet is that just within the city of Brainerd?
That would be
it
within the
you
county as
draw a
well.
circle and you notify all residences that fall within that circle? Is that kind of the intent?
Yep, that's the intent of it, and that's how it would operate.
Okay. All right. Other questions, comments? Mr. Gorham?
Well, we really haven't fleshed out 6F, the energy standards. We have the offset X%, and it's kind of sitting right there. It seems like that's kind of the next challenge, is to get some details there. I almost like the idea of having it the same thing as water, where you have a water plan, you have your power plan, your electricity plan. And again, this would have been great to talk to Director Evans there about, I just want to get an idea of how much power are we using in the city of Brainerd? How much is this, how much are we going to add? What's our capacity? I would just like to get a sense of what the whole picture is, and I don't think we really have that yet. So that'd be my thing. I think we have to add to the 6F.
And Director Evans's memo that he provided kind of outlines the sort of the implementation plan for BPU to hit some of the targets. There are the renewables target, and then there's the carbon-free targets. And these statistics here, it might behoove us to maybe just refer to that or touch base, because they've got their plan of where they want to be at a certain time, and it may not be reasonable to have an applicant for a conditional use permit come to the table with 100% when the goal right now is at 25%. So you could have this ramp up like this plan does to achieve the target by 2040, I think or 2036, excuse me, is the magic date for hitting their goals. You got to worry when we have these high energy projects come in, and with one action at this commission bench here, that suddenly you can dilute the plan here by a significant amount. One project maybe 25%, 20% increase in the amount of demand that's being provided, and suddenly these numbers start to. Now you're trying to keep up with a moving target. It's not static. But maybe attaching them to this plan, as you're suggesting, have a plan of sorts. Maybe this is the benchmark that we try and connect them to. Other thoughts?
The other thought I would have is I would like to. I'm just out of curiosity. I'd like to know how will we get to 60? How will we hit these marks? I'd love to know it. I guess I'm just kind of in the dark on what the plans are. Is it to purchase more alternative? Is it to? I don't even know what the plan is to get to these plans. But again, we can only do so much without the director here.
Yep.
And but I agree with what you were saying, Mike. I think we have to look at what the impact of one plan could be. One big project could upset the whole thing. And so maybe if we phrase it to the fact of it has to work, the plan submitted has to work in harmony with the long-term goals of BPU. That's what we're looking at, right? Isn't that what we're shooting for?
I think that's good proposed language. Other comments? Different approaches? All right. Director Krombeck.
Just add with the power. Certainly, if it becomes something that would negatively impact the rate users or the ratepayers or the city of Brainerd, these contracts aren't signed in perpetuity. So there are options to either renegotiate contracts or obviously not enter into future contracts. So that's a potential. Well, as if there are negative impacts that Brainerd Public Utilities sees. At this point, they have signed contracts with two different parties.
Mr. Norwood.
If I may ask, do you know of any of those numbers that those current contracts are for those two organizations?
I don't know the current numbers, but certainly there are contingencies in there. If their rates go up, rates are going to go up for users, that type of thing. It doesn't lock, from my knowledge, it doesn't lock Brainerd Public Utilities into a set number if their rates are going up.
Any other comments? This is not a public hearing, but if there are members of the audience that would like to suggest or share some thoughts, we're welcome to come up and speak to those and give us a chance to think about this as broadly as we can. Your name and address, sir?
Hi, Mike Higgins, 1801 Mill Avenue and 1511 Northern Pacific Center Road, and 1123 Lakeview Lane. Just bought a house. First time bought a house since I've been here, so thank you for letting some public comments happen. I am pretty concerned about performance standards in a CUP and in planning and zoning, especially when it comes to energy. I have been in Brainerd for about 11 years. I own the Northern Pacific Center and the former Potlatch Paper Mill. And I've been working awful hard for 11 years to bring development. I've invested $35 million of my own money in this community. And I think that as a city and a community, if we keep putting onerous things like this on business people and people wanting to come to our community, that we're going to just stay stuck like we have been for the last 30 or 40 years. You know, I watched Barrett Pet Foods. I worked my butt off to get them in my building, and they were there and things were coming along nicely. They started out with 20,000 square foot, ended up in 150,000 square foot roughly. And then Little Falls came along. They built a manufacturing facility down there. Little Falls rolled out the red carpet for them. Their planners and their economic development people down there courted them, and their planning and zoning walked them through and helped them get through all the planning and zoning ordinances. And now they're down there with a second manufacturing facility, a warehouse, and probably going on 400 employees. And they left because of this kind of stuff. And I'm tired of it, and I wanted to let you guys know that. This 2030 and 2050 energy standards that the governor is trying to slam down our throats is unattainable. If you do any research at all on energy, and I have been doing research for the last few months, because I am gonna put a data center at BIC. And if I gotta make my own power, I'm gonna. But, I mean, come on, we gotta help these people get here. This data mining and this cryptocurrency mining, you can't stop it. Artificial intelligence, we can't stop it. Let's get ahead of it. Let's welcome it here and invite it here. We have an anomaly with our power. We have an amazing public utility division that is studying this and all over it. And it just, when I see stuff like this, I had 2 emails late this afternoon. I had no idea you guys were talking about putting this kind of stuff into our zoning. So I'm wondering why I'm here. Why am I here investing this money? If we keep doing this at planning and zoning, and I'll fight this all the way to city council. You know, you guys have to run this to city council, and then they have to okay it. I'm telling you right now, I'll fight it all the way. So, I just wanted to voice my opinion. I still love this community. I'm still gonna keep investing, but I'm just wondering why I'm here. If we're gonna keep doing this, you know, the paper mill left, the railroad left. You know, I've worked my butt off. I have 70 employees between my 2 properties now, and it's growing. And it's like, I need more. You know, we need housing. We don't need jobs, because we can't, nobody can find a place to live. I just moved my son here from West Virginia to run Northern Pacific Center, and we can't even get into a medium-sized house in the city of Brainerd. And if you want to rent one, it's $2,500 a month. You know, that's the problem we need to be fixing. Not, you know, these are great investments for our community because of the tax revenue. You know, we have capacity in our sewer and water. We have capacity in our power. I know we don't want to talk about it, we want to say it, but we do. And we don't need people. And it creates tax revenue. So this is something we should be welcoming, not making onerous and difficult things to jump through. Like the water stuff you're talking about, that's standard. BPU is always going to gonna check on that. And if they don't have the capacity, they're gonna talk about it. We don't need to put that in our zoning, I don't think, because it's already there. The language about electronic waste, that's federally regulated. Why, they have to do that. When I went through my CUP process with BIC, they had 47 items on there, and 20 of them were federally regulated, and it didn't even matter because I have to follow the federal regulations. So some of the stuff I just don't understand. There's not a lot of common sense or logic to it, in my opinion, and I just wanted to voice my opinion. So thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Higgins. And specifically, you've spoken to the energy standards and the water, so those are places that you feel don't belong, or we don't.
No,
And
there's no
Other
reason.
places here in the ordinance that you would advise us to take a look
No,
at?
and the following the energy standards, if you look at some other communities that did that, there ended up being lawsuits and it was found unconstitutional. So you're opening yourself up for a lawsuit as well, and you're gonna stop any data centers. And I don't necessarily agree with Bitcoin mining, but you can't, AI and what the computers that they're gonna take to run AI in the next 2 years it's mind-boggling. And then even like with the water, you know, James has done his homework, because they don't want to use water. So what they've done is they've switched to systems that, yes, they need 3-4 million gallons of water to get started, but then they're gonna lose 2% a day. So it's not, yes, it's a big number to get the system filled and online, but then they're cooling it, they're recouping it, they're doing all kinds of things to save water. So that's all stuff it's just logic. Everybody's trying to do that, and BPU can control that. I don't think we need to control that at planning and zoning. Let BPU do their jobs. That's why we have them.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion on this item? All right, hearing none. James, you imagine next steps here, are we going to have a product to consider in February or for public hearing, or are we going to be looking at another draft?
Seems like there's maybe a few things that have to get ironed out still, so, and maybe some potential comments from the public. I would probably recommend at this point delaying a public hearing for the next meeting, but that's up to the commission. I'll certainly take direction.
I think we want a durable product. So, Mr. Gorham?
Are we going to have the, if we can reach out to BPU again to see if the director can be here for the next meeting, that'd be great.
That sounds good. Yeah, I can do that.
Thank you.
Mr. Norwood?
And question for city administrator. Would it be, in your opinion, is the council looking for the immediacy of this to be completed before May?
So the current ones that are operating would not be upholden to this ordinance. So it was not something from the city council that this ordinance need to get in front of any type of current development that's going on. There's a lot that would have to go on, before there'd be any type of expansion. So I don't believe delaying it 1 month would be a huge issue.
Okay.
Other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none. I think we've got an action plan for that agenda item. And we are going to now move on to public forum. This is an opportunity for individuals to address the commission on items that were not on tonight's agenda, and those that feedback would be timed. And I see that I may have jumped over something, so I'm going to go to.
Yeah, we have one more item.
Director Gramlich. The commission itinerary. The most discussion is going to be on that one, I suppose. Thank you for reeling me back in. Your notes weren't robust enough, Don. So with that, James, can you set us up for that, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So as you can see here, staff has crossed out the ones that have been completed, listed the ones that are in progress, which at the next city council meeting, there will be reviewing the design standards and then potentially allowing mixed use in the commercial corridor district like we do in downtown. We're working on the crypto mining data center, AI center ordinance currently. Staff did list comprehensive plan update on here is something that the commission discussed last year, kind of where we're at on some of our steps, what might have to be updated, some other things that could be included in here. It has been in our capital plan for a number of years here that this year would be the year that we look at doing an update to see, again, cross out kind of things that have been accomplished and then maybe add new action items. So staff will be drafting an RFP at some point in the next month or two here, so that's something for the Planning Commission to stay tuned for. I think that's something that needs to get started on fairly soon. And then as we're working through that RFP process and choosing a consultant to take a look at that comprehensive plan, certainly we can be working on other ordinances. One that staff discussed a couple months ago as part of the design standards was industrial off-street parking requirements. This has come up a number of times in some of our industrial lots that somebody wants to add a turnaround to a certain area. There's one business that we toured as part of the EDA that talked about adding on to their existing turn area. Well, right now they have a class 5 driveway area. So adding on to that, technically without a variance, you'd have to pave it, because that's according to our ordinance. So I think instances like that, turnaround areas, things that are behind some of our industrial properties, certainly could be potentially class 5 and would maybe limit the burden on some of those expansions. So I think that's something the Planning Commission or staff's recommending we should discuss this winter. I know some council members have been interested as well. Next one is the allowed use table. So this is something our new zoning code was passed in 2022, and again, like the design standards, staff's been working now with it for a couple of years, and certainly there's been some cases that staff's looked at where maybe there should have been something permitted in a certain zoning district, maybe something that should be a conditional use rather than permitted, or vice versa, something that's conditional use maybe should be permitted. So I think this is something that's, probably a little larger project, something that we maybe look at summertime. Certainly could be some more pressing matters like the off-street parking requirements to look at, but something that from a staff perspective, recommending that we look at in the next year. Solar arrays has been coming up. There's been interested parties within the city limits of Brainerd. Right now, our 2 solar arrays that Brainerd Public Utilities has at the airport, which is not in city limits. That would have been county permitted. And then the other one's in Baxter, which I helped guide Brainerd Public Utilities through creating ordinance for Baxter on that one. So there are interested parties in creating solar arrays within the city of Brainerd. So to get out in front of it, I think could be beneficial as well. And then still on the list, it hasn't been a huge issue. There are certain things that probably need to be changed in the manufactured home overlay district, but it does seem like there's probably more pressing matters with that one. And then one that was added was sound requirements from the Planning Commission as well. So with that, I'll maybe add one more thing that it's not going to be on here yet, but staff is working as part with the EDA. We're going to be going and touring. I know Justin's going to be part of that tour, and then Paul Sandy from the EDA as well, touring some of our local daycares centers, just to kind of see what some of their needs are. Is there anything the city can kind of help, zoning wise, or potential grant funding from the EDA? So I think there might be a component coming in this next year that staff will have a recommendation for daycare facilities. So with that, I'll open it up to the Planning Commission. I think what I'm looking for in this discussion, we're still working on ordinances. If there's anything that the commission would like to see added, I think that'd be a good idea now. And then at the next meeting, seeking a recommendation from the Planning Commission on what to work on next.
Thank you, James. So for the allowable use table, is that something that an intern could be tasked to just kind of go through and put that together? And where I'm heading is possibly a budget request for the department so that we could get that one knocked out. That doesn't seem like it's really a big time thing, but if you're balancing other items. and
We do have a temporary employee that could do kind of an exhaustive search on that. So that's already there. We wouldn't have to hire an intern to do that. That kind of temporary employee within our department kind of handles special projects like that. Certainly, I'd be a big part of that, kind of final review to make sure that, I've been the one working with it for the last couple of years, so I kind of know where maybe our holes are on that. But yeah, certainly something that I could have our temporary employee work on as well.
So, yes, Mr. Peterson.
Well, that's one I'd like to start going on, to tell you the truth, the allowable table. I think there's many things that should be opened up or changed. So I think that is a process. It's gonna take a little while, and I would like to see that one going.
You used the word changed. This sounded like a housekeeping piece. Are you thinking
think
about
it's more-
revisiting the uses?
Well, possibly, or just expanding them.
So is that consistent with the scope that you're proposing for this one here?
It is. I think it'd be there might not be a ton of changes in there, but certainly I want to clean up anything. I think it would be a fairly exhaustive review, but I'm not sure how many changes would actually come from. There'll be a handful of them, but again, I think the review period is going to take longer than the actual changes that are brought forward.
Mr. Chair,
So,
would that also coincide with the comp plan update, or is that?
It could potentially, yeah. That might be a good idea to have those two kind of coincide, so it, our uses kind of align with what we're looking at for the future for Brainerd.
so how we prioritize and nest and sequence, I think, is maybe the discussion for next meeting is what I'm anticipating when we have a city council liaison on board would be my expectation. So maybe for this moment in time, unless there are questions of clarity, maybe we're looking for potential additions. First of all, if we might just, if folks have on their radar places where we need some work done. And so, Mr. Peterson, there's possibly an expanded scope on uses. If you have specific areas that we should think about, or other members have suggestions on places to examine. One area that, Mr. Higgins today, or present here this evening, if we think about, I always imagine your BIC site. I think of what it can be and what it is, and how do we continue to feed and care for that in a way that's beneficial to you and also the community. So if we think about the concept of this renewable energy, the conversation we had just earlier, there's also a component to renewable energy that is storing energy, right? Energy storage. And do we have the ability within our ordinance to handle energy storage that so if a venture wants to come here and say, I'm going to connect up to a nearby solar array and I'm going to capture energy and I'm going to hang on to it, I'm going to feed it out during peak demand or those sorts of things. Can we do that right now under our existing ordinance? Do we need to make a parking spot for that as a future amendment to our ordinance? So, Director Kronbeck, you got some thoughts on that?
Yeah, so it may, could, in industrial, it could, if it's indoors, it could be, storage and warehousing, it could fall under that. I'd probably need more information from, how might it affect, the outside? And that's typically where you look at it, adding, adding more conditions to it, making a conditional use permit. So I'd need probably more information, but, potentially if it's in our ordinance, potentially not.
So it's kind of one second, Mike, thank you. So it's basically an industrial use. So, you got a lot in the industrial park. You have other industrial areas around. Being able to be clear whether that's an option that we can welcome into the city or not.
And certainly, I don't know, what impacts and, neighboring areas might be, but, you know, we certainly have certain things that are permitted in industrial, conditional use in general commercial. So thinking of where solar arrays might be located, and, you know, there, you might need more options than simply industrial. So, you know, that'd be an option to do as well. Then you can expand to additional zoning districts, especially if there's not really an issue from a neighborhood perspective on them.
So basically, just, you know, if there's interest in that as a placeholder on this list, and so when we start sorting the deck here next meeting, seeing where that particularly pops out. Mr. Gorham?
I only thought is maybe we just expanded from solar arrays to just a bigger title, alternative energies, put a bigger title on it, and then we can put more things into that category.
Be nested into
Yeah,
that.
yeah. If that makes any sense with the folks. Cool.
Mr. Higgins, did you have, this is not where we're gonna flesh these ideas out, but to get them.
I just have an example of an issue I ran into recently that I would like to share.
Come on up to the podium, please.
So we're talking about how can we make it easier for businesses and things to happen in our community. And so a couple weeks ago, I had a prospect reach out that wants to put a trailer, like little trailers you pull behind your pickup, sales. They want to move it. They're out in the country right now and they want to move it into town. So he wants to lease a half an acre from me and an office so he can get his license through the state. And I didn't think it would be an issue, but I called James just to see, hey, what do I got to do? And he's like, he looks it up in his code book and he's like, nope, you got to go through a CUP process. That's kind of crazy if you ask me. It's a half an acre. It's selling trailers. I'm the heaviest zone industrial in town. I'm trying to create jobs. I'm trying to save the building. I'm trying to create tax dollars, and I have to go through a 2 to 3 month process for $1,000 a month lease, and the guy's going to go away. I lost him. So we need to think about stuff like that when we're creating ordinances and we're changing zoning, you know, if we want to build, if we want to be a better Brainerd and a bigger Brainerd, and we want to bring more tax dollars in, and we want to have budgets in order to do more stuff, it's driven from business. It's driven from tax dollars. You know, that trailer sales would have to pay 0.5% of sales tax directly to the city of Brainerd. When I go down to Ziegler Cat, and I go down there a lot, and I spend a lot of money, every single receipt, 0.5% goes right to Brainerd, you know, which is awesome. Make it 1%. As far as I'm concerned, it's going back into my community, but why do we have things in our ordinances that make me have to jump through hoops, spend 2 or 3 months when it's unneeded? So I think that's part of what we're looking at trying to get done. I asked James about it, and he agreed with me and said he would start putting some stuff on the agenda and talking to you. So that's an example of an issue that I ran into
All right, thanks.
in the future, recently.
Thank you, Mr. Higgins.
Thank you.
So, James, is it beneficial at this time to dive into any of these? Really, just you've got a couple potential additions to the list.
Yep, so this is something that really just a discussion if commission members want to add anything tonight, not really an order to operations that we're looking at for the next year. I think that would be, you know, probably appropriate at the next meeting. And then certainly, if commission members are thinking of things, you know, after the meeting here, they can reach out to me, and it's something that I can, you know, add to the next planning commission meeting.
And we can certainly add to this at any time as well as a group in addition, so. Yeah. Any other discussion on this topic? All right, hearing none. You've got what you need for now?
That's correct.
Very good, thank you. You know, I'm thinking we might want to go to public forum next. Good, I got the nod. This is the time for individuals to bring issues to the commission that weren't on tonight's agenda. And so I'm going to open up the public forum at 6:59. Is there anyone that would care to speak to the commission at this time? And I'm going to ask a second time, anyone care to speak to the commission at this time? Any issues? And a last time, anyone care to come forward? All right, hearing none, we will close the public hearing at 6:59, and we're going to move on to staff reports. James and
Yeah, so I already touched a little bit about what we're going to be working on with childcare centers. I think I'll also touch base on what the city council will be reviewing at the next council meeting for Country Manor. Certainly a number of items. It'll be the PUD request. It'll be the tax abatement request that was reviewed by the EDA, and then a request for deferral of SAC and WAC fees that were reviewed by the Public Utilities Commission. So that'll be at the February 3rd city council meeting. Staff is still, currently working with D.W. Jones on the Thrifty White project. I'm sure you guys are well aware that Thrifty White did come down in this last week here. That was a couple-week process to remove the abatement, and then they were finally able to demolish the building after the holidays here. So that certainly is an investment on their part to continue on with potentially doing that project. They're still very interested in it. There's a funding gap that they do need to close on that one, and they did do a presentation at Bladex meeting before the holidays here on what potential options are out there from the state of Minnesota for funding. So hopefully that one comes to fruition here over the next few months here, and we get some more information, but there's some progress being made on that project.
thank you. Administrator Broyle, do you have any,
Nothing to add, other than congratulations on the new position.
It's an old position, actually.
for the day? Potentially for the day. Thank you. Okay, with that, any questions on that staff report? Otherwise, we'll move on to commission member reports. Mr. Gorham.
Super quick question. So they knocked the building down, but they still don't have all the funds together? I'm just trying to kind of put the two things
They
together.
don't, yeah. So they're still working on some funding on that one. Some of the demolition was tied to some of the grants that they had received from the Main Street Foundation. So
Just looking for clarification. Thank you.
I suspect that's a significant commitment, knocking a building down and filling a hole, so. So with that, Mr. Peterson, comments, reports?
I don't really have any comments or reports.
All right, thank you. Mr. Gorham?
I just want to, I respect Mr. Higgins. I definitely respect your perspective, but I do think we've done a lot of work on housing, and I'm really proud of the work we've done on housing the last few years. It's a huge priority. I agree with you. It's nuts. We've done things like the Thrifty White project. We green-lighted that. We've made changes to the zoning law to allow more density. We've taken on some of the sacred cows like R1. That you can't have multifamily housing in R1. Big secret, of course, is that Brainerd's always had family housing in R1. So we've made changes there to allow more density. We've done some work on the building design standards. Mr. Peterson helped us out with the idea of maybe you don't always have to have garages for every single duplex you make and things like this. We made some changes, so I think we've shown some flexibility, and we're with you. Housing is absolutely a job one for us. It's a priority. So yeah, I appreciate your perspective, but I also appreciate the work that we have been able to get done. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Gorham. Mr. Gasula?
No comments.
All right, Mr. Norwood?
No further.
Okay. Well, all I have to say is that I'm going to issue a gold star to MnDOT for the condition of their sidewalks across Washington Street Bridge today. And I think that's a terrible indictment for the rest of the businesses along and residents along Washington Street, because that was the only place that had a clear sidewalk walking over here. So we might need to visit our sidewalks along Washington Street to make them walkable. I spent a lot of time walking in parking lots to get over here as opposed to the sidewalk, but I'm just amazed that MnDOT was on top of it for a change. So I'll give them a gold star and they're good to go. So with that, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
Adjourn?
Yeah. Yeah, we got
Second.
one.
I'll second one.
All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. We are adjourned at 7:03. Thank you, everybody.